ultimate goodness, what have I been saying? The great spirit of ultimate goodness. I don't believe there's an invisible man. There is no goddamn heaven and fucking Jesus Christ. How the fuck can you know if that person existed or not? But the ideas of Jesus, holy shit, how revolutionary can you get? Turn the other cheek. Love thy neighbor, love thy enemy. Turn the other cheek. The good go through the little gate because the path for the righteousness is narrow. Everybody who uses the main street, the main drag, the big gate, they are addicted to sin. They're a bunch of wicked sons of bitches. That which you do to the least of my brethren, you do unto me. The last will be first, the first will be last. It's almost saying every man a king. I do believe in one God, the creator and governor of the universe, the rewarder of the good and the punisher of the wicked, and I do acknowledge the scriptures of the Old and New Testament to be given by divine inspiration. So that goes a little bit too far, but no further or other religious test shall ever hereafter be required of any civil officer or magistrate in this state. Divine inspiration? No, those are fucking guys who wrote the fucking books of the Old and New Testament. Talk about goddamn, how arrogant to say that shit that other fucking people wrote down in a book was actually written by God, inspired by God. Oh, it wasn't just some fucking asshole saying he's God. No, God himself actually, you don't know that. You don't know that. If you want to go back to, was it Augustine or, not Augustus, Augustine or Aquinas, one of those two guys, he had said that you only can understand eternal law. You can't understand divine law. You can't get inside the mind of God. With grace, you may come close to divine law, but only God knows divine law. Only God knows God's law. You don't know God's law. You can get close with eternal law, and that's why, oh man, is this Aquinas or Augustine? But it's such a great quote, and pay attention to this and, soak it in. Natural law is rational man's participation in eternal law. Let me repeat that for those in the back. Natural law is a way for rational man to participate in eternal law. What's natural law? We are rational men and women, and so therefore we can deduce what is right and what is wrong. We can go ahead and write up our own laws, and we can get close to divine law with eternal law. We'll never get to divine law because we don't know the mind of God. But perhaps if our laws stay afloat, the 10 Commandments have been around for 3,500 fucking years. There's a reason the 10 Commandments have stuck around for such a long time. Because they're close to divine law. They're close to divine law. Mercy. And so that's the test. That's the ultimate test of, did you get close to eternal law? Thou shalt not murder. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt respect thy neighbor. These are good laws. These are good laws that, is a solid foundation for a civilization. So that's interesting. They had a religious test right there in the Constitution of Pennsylvania. Delegates to represent the state in Congress shall be chosen by ballot. If any city or cities, county or counties shall neglect or refuse, the doors of the house in which the representatives of the freemen of this state shall sit in the General Assembly shall be and remain open for the admission of all persons who behave decently, except only when the welfare of the state may require the doors to be shut. Interesting. So they're saying, come one, come all. We're going to, talk about the laws of Pennsylvania. Come one, come all. The styles of this law. I wanted to point out the freedoms, okay? So we get the general gist of this is the structure of the government, and then by the structure of the government, it's supposed to protect the freedoms in the Declaration of Rights. Section 25, trials shall be by jury as heretofore. It is recommended to the legislature of this state to provide by law against every corruption or partiality in the choice, return, or appointment of juries. Trials shall be by jury. All courts shall be open, and justice shall be impartially administered without corruption or unnecessary delay. All their officers shall be paid an adequate and moderate compensation for their services, and if any officer shall take greater or other fees than the law allows him, either directly or indirectly, it shall ever after disqualify him from holding any office in this state. Section 29, excessive bail shall not be exacted for bailable offenses, and all fines shall be moderate. That's 29. 35, the printing presses shall be free to every person who undertakes to examine the proceedings of the legislature or any part of government. 43, the inhabitants of the state shall have liberty to fowl and hunt in seasonable times on the lands they hold, and on all other lands therein not enclosed, and in like manner to fish in all boatable waters, and others not private property. So you have a right to hunt, you have a right to fish. You don't need to get a goddamn motherfucking license or a fucking, goddamn, what else is a permit? Hey, I was going to go do a little fishing. Did you get your permit? You went ahead and threw a damn line with a fish on a hook into the fucking river? You're a goddamn criminal. And well, here in the laws of Pennsylvania, you have a right to fish and to hunt. You have a right to fish and hunt. And back in the days of subsistence, hand-to-mouth farming, you had to fucking do, fishing and hunting in order to survive, in order to live. Oregon Trail, you had to, you brought some of the food with you, but you had to hunt. You had to hunt your way out there. So you had to bring so many pounds of food, but you also had to bring so many pounds of ammunition and gunpowder. The Declaration of Rights is hereby declared to be a part of the Constitution of this Commonwealth and never to be violated on any pretense whatsoever. That's section 46. 47, in order that the freedom of this Commonwealth may be preserved inviolate forever, there shall be chosen by ballot by the freemen in each city and county respectively on the second Tuesday in October in the year 1783, and on the second Tuesday in October every seventh year thereafter, to persons in each city and county of the state to be called the council censors, who shall meet together on the second Monday of November next, since ensuing their election, the majority of whom shall be a quorum in every case, except as to call in a convention in which 2/3 of the whole number elected shall agree, in whose duty it shall be to inquire whether the Constitution has been preserved inviolate in every part, and whether the legislative and executive branches of the government have performed their duty as guardians of the people, or assumed to themselves or exercised other or greater powers than they are entitled to by the Constitution. Ben Franklin passed in convention the 28th day of September 1776, signed by their order, Benjamin Franklin, President. Ben Franklin signed the Pennsylvania Constitution. And William Penn was a badass. He came with the Constitution himself. So that's just one state of the 13, 14 states, depending on Vermont comes in there, 1791. So when it comes to originalism, when it comes to what does the U.S. Constitution mean, there's a lot of emphasis when it comes to common law, so old ancient English law, but nothing about the state constitutions. You know what influenced the U.S. Constitution the most? The state constitutions. The state constitutions of the 13 or 14 colonies. Not England. England had some fucking, something to do with something with how the state constitutions came out. But more importantly than common law were the state constitutions. And so therefore, I think that we should have an American common law. What were the goddamn court cases that were here on this land? I think we should start with Zinger. Zinger v. Cosby. Zinger v. Cosby was one of the first court cases here. And talk about eternal. There's an eternal law right there. That's close to divine law. Zinger v. Cosby. What did we learn with the freedom of the press? He was writing a bunch of things that was hurting the governor's goddamn feelings. Not he was actually publishing it. So Zinger was just a publisher. He wasn't even the one writing the hurtful things. But Cosby says, hey, you can't do that because that's hurting the sanctity of our fucking whatever. Ultimately, it was a libel charge, right? Libel, slander. Hey, you can't say that about us. And they said that truth is a defense against libel. You want to sit there and try to tell me that the shit that I wrote somehow injured you? The only way that what I wrote injured you is if I wrote something that was not true. And unless you can prove that what I wrote was not true, and I'll have to prove that it was true, but it could be just in no man's land, we might not have any goddamn clue. We may never be able to discern the truth. It could be evasive. Who killed William Justice Goebel?